The Trump administration is pressuring Iraq. Iraq is bracing for a possible increase in U.S. sanctions. This is an urgently important news report. Again, this is Sunday's video, being released early because of the seriousness of the situation. Listen to what the channel's voiceover is telling you. But first, if you want to enhance profits with your IQD, join the channel's membership. We are learning how to trade on Iraq's ISX stock market.
Here's what's happening. The Trump administration during the past 2 weeks has sent Iraq direct messages regarding the need to dismantle armed factions and withdraw their weapons. The number of Iraqi banks that are now on the sanctions list reached 28 out of 44 banks operating in Iraq. Iraq is bracing itself for possible U.S. sanctions if the government does not disarm Iran-linked Iraqi armed factions and break its ties with Tehran. There are growing calls in Washington for financial and economic sanctions against Baghdad to pressure the country to disarm and dismantle militias with strong links to Iran. This is serious business. The 411 is that the Biden administration stopped Israel from attacking Iraq after Iraqi-Iran militias attacked Israel repeatedly. The Trump administration is putting pressure on Iraq to dismantle, disarm, and disconnect from Iran on all levels. The agreement for electricity which the Biden administration allowed, the Trump administration issued an executive order making the agreement for electricity with Iran invalid. One particular focus of the U.S. administration is on Iran-supplied drones and medium-range missiles which some of the Iran-backed factions possess, and have been used to attack Israeli targets and U.S. military bases in Iraq and Syria. An Iraqi foreign ministry official requested anonymity and told the New Arab's Arabic language sister edition that Iraq was headed for a coming political confrontation with the U.S. administration under President Donald Trump. He said senior U.S. officials had proposed a plan to disengage Iraq from Iran, adding that in the last fortnight, Washington had sent direct messages to the Iraqi government about the necessity of dismantling and disarming the armed factions, especially the 7 involved in attacks against Israel and U.S. military sites after October 7, 2023. The 7 groups are those which form the Islamic resistance in Iraq, an umbrella term for Iran-backed militias in Iraq that have launched dozens of attacks on U.S. military bases in Iraq and Syria, as well as Israeli targets, in response to Israel's unprecedented bombardment of the Gaza Strip and massacring of civilians. Factions involved include Kataib Hezbollah, Asaib al-Haq, Harakat Hezbollah al-Nujaba, Harakat Ansar Allah al-Awfiya, Kataib Sayyid al-Shuhada, Kataib al-Imam Ali, and Liwa al-Tafuf. However, the official indicated that Washington's aim wasn't just disarming the factions, but preventing prohibited weapons from being obtained by any Iraqi faction, even those in the Popular Mobilization Forces, which is formally under the Iraqi Defense Ministry. These weapons include fixed-wing drones with a range of over 200 kilometers and missiles with a range of over 80 kilometers, both of which Iran supplies to Iraq. However, Iraq's government will face a major challenge in addressing this issue, said the official, due to the faction's refusal to comply alongside other influential Shia parties. Mahdi Taki, leader of the Coordination Framework, Iraq's ruling Shia coalition alliance, said the U.S. seeks to enforce security and economic decisions which violate Iraqi sovereignty. The way the resistance factions think isn't like the way political parties think. These factions see Iraq as a country occupied by U.S. forces, and act accordingly, and at times carry out certain security operations in a way which doesn't align with the Iraqi political perspective, he added. He believes if Israel resumes its attacks on the Lebanese or on the people of Gaza, this will push the resistance to renew its operations. An Iraqi MP who also requested anonymity stated that economic sanctions were anticipated rather than military action. He added that Iraq had already seen sanctions on Iraqi banks and companies accused of dealing with Iranian institutions, and the cancellation of the waiver previously granted to Iraq to import gas from Iran. U.S. penalties could reach imposing restrictions around the purchase of Iraqi oil, added the MP, who stressed that, while disarming the factions is the overriding goal, Washington also wanted to reform Iraq's financial system in a way that would exclude Tehran. However, the MP said the Iraqi government on its own is incapable of containing the factions or forcing them to give up their weapons and merge into official state institutions. The issue concerned political agreements between the Shia parties and required an Iranian response above all for concessions to be made, he added. Over the past 4 years, U.S. federal authorities have placed 28 Iraqi banks out of 44, and financial companies on the sanctions list, accusing them of dealing with Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the former Assad regime in Syria. Additionally, Iraqi individuals and businessmen have been sanctioned for the same reason, along with an airline company and several transportation and tourism firms. In mid-January, Iraq's Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein said Baghdad was trying to convince the armed factions which had targeted U.S. forces in Israel to lay down their weapons or join the official security forces. Commenting on the growing U.S. pressure, Alaa Mustafa, a researcher in Iraqi politics, described Iraqi politics as confused. He said despite all the dangerous external indicators, politicians in Baghdad aren't talking clearly about this. He warned that the situation was increasingly dangerous, with a bloc of around 13 U.S. Congress members now talking about imposing sanctions on Iraq, forms of new economic pressure, and breaking Iraq's link to Iran. Mustafa concluded that while the Trump administration hasn't taken any serious action regarding Iraq until now, all indications are that the current months will see measures of this kind.